I'm Nicole Casperson, Fintech journalist, and this is What the Fintech. As a journalist who has covered the finance sector over the last 5 years, I've had the opportunity to interview and engage with some of the best minds in the space. The media landscape is changing, and financial services is grabbing the attention of a more diversified audience than ever before. As a member of that growing demographic, I will provide direct access to the inner workings of a complex industry while bringing an unconventional perspective to news coverage. Leaving big bank earning reports to the boring traditional media firms, I'll focus on the tech-savvy apps, digital investing platforms, challenger banks, and payment giants to drive relevant content that looks forward to disruption instead of fearing it. Hi, everyone, and welcome to What the Fintech, a podcast for fintech professionals who are ready to shape the future of our industry with innovation and inclusion. I'm your host, Nicole Casperson, and today I'm interviewing Rishi. He's the CEO of Stocktwits, a social media service for retail investors. It's a 5 million member community and continues to grow as the platform reimagines the future of financial media, investing, and trading services, and the tools that are needed for the next generation. In this conversation, Rishi and I get very real about entrepreneurship, the evolving landscape of fintech meets content, and what Tupac song can help you in your investing journey. Rishi, I'm so happy to have you with us here. Welcome to What the Fintech.
Thank you, Nicole. Happy to be here. Excited for our conversation.
Yeah, super excited. So to start, how are you today and where are you working from?
I am good. I am working from our office in sunny New York City, close to Bryant Park. I'm the only one that comes into the office, but yeah, I'm here. It's it's warmer today, which is nice. I think we're in the 40s and stuff, but yeah.
40s and stuff is warmer for us here in New York. Yeah, I know. It's nice for like a sunny day for a change, but that's so funny. Why do you? So obviously you're like nice and flexible with your team there for them to not always want to come into the office. Yeah, clearly, I guess so. That is something cool with you. Hybrid life. You give the option if.
Yeah, I mean, we, obviously at the start of COVID, we were concentrated in New York City, our core team, for the most part. But since then, we've kind of evolved to become a remote first org. I mean, we do have, I'd say maybe still like 15-20% of our team is in the, tri-state area. But we've now, expanded greatly over the last 2 years, and we're in 10 states in the U.S., and I think we're in 7 countries now as well. So we've kind of embraced the remote world, and you can't. It's hard to turn back the clock from that.
Right.
And so so we're doing our best to thrive in this new world.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely. Well, cool. I always love asking that question. It kind of helps us know, are those vine leaves in your home or are they in your workplace?
I'm in our New York City conference room, so New York or nowhere, baby.
All right, awesome. Well, I also love opening up the conversation by learning just more about you and your background, and because I do truly believe that helps influence your leadership. And you let me know before that you did grow up with kind of this entrepreneurial calling within you. Where do you think that kind of stems from? And feel free to, share a story or experience or, a moment that kind of made you feel, I want to do this.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a moment, but I thought about this more, and I think, for me specifically, and I don't know if it's true for everybody, but I do think, when you have that nature versus nurture conversation, I think entrepreneurship is very much in my nature, right? It wasn't something I kind of developed. I think, at a young age, it was something I observed in myself, whether it was in junior high and even high school, like having like small businesses and different things. I think it might be a function of my dad's an engineer on one side, and my mom's kind of very much a creative person, and kind of on that side, so like both left brain, right brain kind of things going on. And to me, entrepreneurship is one of those ways to express both the joy of building things, but also having to be, creative to solve problems and do it, in a way that maybe somebody else isn't doing it or better than somebody else is doing it. So, I think that's where it's born. And it was something I just kind of kept building upon, right? From before high school into high school and then, into college. So, yeah, I think, I'm fortunate that it was in my nature and I was able to find it, embrace it and go from there.
That's awesome. And I think it's like there's something about, post, I guess we're in post pandemic life ish, that makes, yeah, I'm like ish, that
Ish.
makes, that makes it feel like, you can do more of that, right? Like you can do more things that, okay, if you're, both very operational, but also want to be very creative, like, oh, there's different kind of pathways. There's just like, so many new like job opportunities and things you can do, from like crypto to even, even what it like Stocktwits, right? Like that's so awesome to just even like kind of be a part of like the transformation of like information, right? Like there's so many different places you can go to be both, aspects of yourself. And I think we're just getting like more creative with our jobs every day and bringing our like passions more. And I do think that stems a lot from the pandemic.
Yeah, I think the pandemic has helped open people up to those opportunities. I think foundationally, over the last 30 years, the rise of tech and what information access has enabled, and this is something that applies in the microcosm of Stocktwits, but I think just generally speaking, right? Information is just so much more accessible to us. Tools are so much more accessible, and it's gotten only exponentially better over, doing startups in the 90s was very different than doing startups today, right? Even doing startups in the, aughts and the teens, it's gotten a lot easier. And we're seeing it obviously in our current iteration of post COVID or, almost post COVID, of all the kind of individual businesses you can build. It doesn't have to be a 100,000 person company that has to be your ambition. You can be an entrepreneur and be a solopreneur. You can be a small kind of business entrepreneur, and access to a global market is there because of, this thing called, the internet and the access to
Hmm.
information. So I think that's really, I was lucky to be born, kind of at the right time to be, a part of that kind of journey there.
Yes, and I'm excited to dive into kind of you having this like amazing timing with everything that you're doing in your career and right now. But first, I have to ask. So, both of your parents are Indian immigrants. How has that first question shaped your values today? Which is, I know, a loaded question. So, feel free to just pick like the main one because I have an immigrant parent as well. So I know that that just does fuel so much of who you are. And, there's a lot of like reflection that comes with that and
Yeah.
childhood experiences. And okay, how do I bring those lessons learned to adulthood?
Yeah, I mean, as you know, right, having an immigrant parent, I think, it's not unique to me, but just, when my parents came from India, post college kind of thing, and, worked their way up and just very much, kind of hardworking atmosphere. I think, the two things that were really instilled were that work ethic of, hey, you just got to work hard, you got to, take responsibility, for working hard and doing that. And then also learning, which I think is very, going back to our entrepreneurial conversation, is very, important for, just entrepreneurship, but just in general, and having both the formal kind of, you know, academic pressures or
Yeah.
intensities that come with immigrant parents, and got to do well in school, got to focus on that. But I was again fortunate to have kind of both sides of the hard work and learning, but also have probably a little bit more freedom and openness from my parents in terms of my ability to interact socially and kind of do that side of things. Even some of the entrepreneurial stuff I was doing in high school and stuff, I just encourage that. But very much it did come back to hey, get good grades, work hard, put in that effort, and that's something you need to do if you're going to start a business or want to be successful in general, right? I don't think, there's a little bit of a controversial statement maybe, but there's been this movement to, hey, work life balance and things like that, which is totally great, and I think most people should have that and go for that. But if you want to do something, if you want to build something and be a part of something that's going to be game changing, world changing, industry changing, you're probably gonna have to put in more than 8-9 hours a day, at least in the beginning. And I think having kind of the values and of first generation immigrants, you get a lot of that no matter where they're from, really.
Oh yeah, no, absolutely. I love that you were able to like tie kind of that common thread because like my mom's from the Philippines and I totally feel that as well, right? You just are kind of instilled with this like work ethic, but then able to kind of modernize it and customize it to your own, more I guess Americanized style. But
Yeah.
yeah, it has allowed me to also, yeah, I'm also a founder building something, just it's content, but like I know the grind is real and
Absolutely. Absolutely.
it does take like it's like finding that balance between like your passion and your work, and then like you also just get even more like I'm like more emotional than I ever was before when it comes to my work because my work is me
Yeah.
now. I mean, it's not is me, but you know what I mean, like it's
Of
it's
course.
it's something I'm building, so like
Yeah.
it's yeah, and I'm sure you've just felt that like
And by the way, as a founder, it's okay. Like as a founder, it is okay to be you. I know people say don't make your work your identity, and I get that, and that's probably
yeah,
not healthy for 95% of people out there. But I don't separate kind of my work life and my personal life. You just and for me, I think it is something that is intertwined because I
totally.
enjoy it. Right, I'm not dreading it. I mean, there are up days, there are down days, there are great days, there are shitty days, but embrace it.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Okay, I love that. There's no perfect formula for anyone, and it's like you have to just do it the best that
Yeah,
fits for you, and what you want to build. And yeah, I totally think that like your work life and your personal life are well, they're definitely very connected, right? Like one needs to be, they're balanced. One needs to be right so that the other one works, and vice versa.
100%.
Yes. So also, okay. So then my other question in regards to your parents is what was it like expressing to them that entrepreneurship was the path for you over maybe more traditional careers? Because I know
Yeah.
that I'm still trying to convince my mom that I do more than just play on Twitter all day. So,
That I don't think that's ever going to change for us, by the way. So, yeah, for me, again, as I was saying, I did have, I was fortunate to have, I think, a little bit more space in that sense. A lot of it because I did well academically, and so there was that. And on my dad's side, he was the engineer, right? And I'm an engineer as well. I'm a CS and double E by education and background. But he was on that side of it. It was cool. On my mom's side, it was definitely either okay, engineering is fine, or become a doctor, preferably a doctor.
okay,
So
yeah.
that didn't work out for her. Thought it worked out fine for me, but but not for her on that front. But there's the kind of I think there had been the element for a long time of she didn't know the names of the companies I was working for, or hey, that I'm starting my own company, as opposed to, go work for the big, as an engineer, work for the Intel, work for the Microsoft, work for the
Mm-hmm.
names that you would know, right? But she was still supportive through that, I think, but, it was definitely one of those things where, hey, you should be a doctor, but if you're not going to be a doctor, hey, maybe work for a company that I know. Why don't you want to take that job? Why don't you work at this big company where I hear all these people work and it's great. So that was a long process. I'm not going to lie. I mean, I did my first startup right out of college. So, that was definitely a jarring thing there. And then I did my next startup in '07 again. But, now I think now it's all good. I think. I
Yeah, no,
think.
I love that. I love that story. I know you're like, no, I think she's chilling. So, okay. So, speaking of college, I'm excited to kind of talk a little bit about, you going to Cornell in the 1990s and just having a lot of interesting experiences, including launching your first startups. And so how did, that early experience really like pave the path for where you are today?
Yeah. Again, I think this is a function of like kind of timing and luck, right? Where I was at Cornell from '95 to '99, which was very much the rise of kind of the tech, .com time, a lot of tech, a lot of investment there. And even though I wasn't on the West Coast at Cornell, we actually had a pretty thriving, I think, kind of community in that sense. And I started working on projects at Cornell. My first one, actually, I don't even know that I told you this, but my first one, with my roommate for most of the time, Steve, and another friend, Matt. We actually launched something called CampusSpot.com, which was a social network for college students, to connect them. Didn't quite take off in the same way as maybe some other social networks took off 5 to 10 years later. But that was actually one of the first forays. We had this company called theglobe.com that was born out of Cornell. And it was like one of the first, I think still to this day, one of the highest flying IPOs. I mean, it obviously crashed, but it went public at like $9 and closed the first day at $100. So there was that buzz and energy. And then I ended up, kind of starting my first, kind of funded startup with a co-founder, Noah, and another co-founder, Rich. And Noah and I went to school together, Cornell together, and we met. He was a very successful DJ. I was a college DJ, and that's kind of how we connected over that. We have another friend, Josh, also Cornell, also a big VC now. Josh Wolf, who was also in that kind of circle, and that's how we all, I think, connected, met. But Noah and I started this company, and Noah today is the CEO of Acorns, coincidentally. So it's kind of funny how full circle this comes. 20 years later, he's the CEO of Acorns. I'm the CEO of Stocktwits. Our other co-founder, Rich, is the founder and of 35 Ventures, and so he's Kevin Durant's business partner and manager. And they do a ton of investing right across Coinbase and Robinhood and all those things as well. And we've had an interesting class come out of there. I recently reconnected with an acquaintance she's now the CMO of Yield Street, right? Another fintech high flyer. And, so it's, the shaping of kind of the entrepreneur being there at that time and giving, kind of me the energy and excitement to go after starting something. Just kind of getting the exposure, I think, to networks and communities in that space, and then moving to New York City, in '99, and just falling in love with New York City, where I actually had taken a full-time job in Boston, but then we were able to, kind of launch our startup. So I called that founder CEO the night before I was supposed to start, be like, hey, I'm not going to be there. Sorry. And by the way, 20 years later, he is now my neighbor, lives down the street, and we bumped into each other at a tech event here in the city, and like, wait a minute, that's crazy, right? So
Wow.
yeah, it was very, very much a formidable time, and I do think timing's a big part of it, and being out there and putting yourself out there, taking the shots is what kind of evolved for me.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, just how crazy. Like, I mean, to think that you had just this like crew of folks who would, and you don't know it at the time, right? That would eventually become like leading executives in the fintech space, and then you guys just like get
And
to
we
have
weren't
like
doing anything close to fintech, right? Our
yeah
first
at
startup
the
was,
time.
content and community. Like that was our first startup.
Yeah.
It was in
Oh,
the
yeah.
music
That's so
space, had
true.
nothing to do with fintech finance.
Oh, wow.
Yeah,
That is such
so
a
it
good
was.
point.
Yeah, it is just kind of how you see the evolution, right? And exposure to the different things. Yeah, it is one of those things that still I'm just like, wow, like look at that
Wow.
journey and look at the people, and we've just been lucky, I guess.
Yeah, I mean, if you like think about it too, I mean, so you originally started out right creating something a little bit more about community and content and so interesting. And now even though it is fintech, it's still very like look what fintech has become. Now it is about content. It is about community. Yeah, I mean that is so cool. Before I like continue asking questions about like fintech and content, what kind of music were you guys DJing in Cornell in '95?
Well, I was, I'm primarily like, kind of party DJ. So like, I love hip hop. So there's a lot of hip hop and pop too, right? Like, you just want to have fun, want to get people kind of dancing and have a good time. Noah and Josh both also kind of much better than me, but in that same ilk, and they're both from New York City. I'm from Rochester, so a little different vibe. But yeah, so a lot of that, and it's great still to this day. It's one of my passions.
Yeah. Oh, I love it. I love it. I know. I can't wait to ask you more about it towards the end. But yeah, I think what we've seen is also just with like this access that you kind of spoke about earlier, right? With more access to information comes more responsibility. And we've definitely seen that from, the political atmosphere to GameStop, stock frenzy. What were maybe the first few weeks like when were starting at Stocktwits, and how much has just changed, right? With all this, so much has changed. But from your view, how has it been, right? Kind of adapting to all of the change that, since you started out, and is there anything that's kind of like maybe just stayed the same?
Yeah, so I mean, so I started early 2020, so right before COVID. So a
Yeah.
lot happened. I like to characterize 2020 kind of each quarter in kind of different stages, right? I mean, the first quarter, I joined in January, and there was a lot going on, and obviously March is when COVID really hit in the U.S. and made its impact. But so Q1 was kind of, I characterize as chaos. Q2 was picking up the pieces and triaging it. And Q3 was, I think for us going into recovery, and then Q4 was meant to be that return to growth, and like really being able to think beyond the what's going to happen in the next 2 weeks, 4 weeks kind of thing. And so for us, there's been a lot of, I think, in our space, right? The individual investor and trader in the retail space, I think the biggest change that evolved out of that was just for the next generation, right? The millennials and the Gen Zs, and no, you're not part of it. I know you want to be, but I try to tell my wife I'm a millennial. I swear. Like, what are the numbers again?
I know I'm not a Gen Z.
And I'm Gen X, but we saw, I think, the massive introduction to the market because it was the only game in town. It was the only thing happening for a long time. But it's also it's a very important thing because it's one of the few wealth engines left in the U.S. and in society in general, like where you can really kind of build wealth, right? We are set up to reward assets and wealth. We are not set up to reward just kind of work and income as a society. Now, whether that's good or
Mhm.
bad, we can have a whole separate podcast on. But so I think that the fact that it opened a lot of people's eyes and introduced them to it, because millennials and millennials especially were very much underinvested compared to Gen X and Boomers and stuff. So I thought that's a big plus, and it's an apprenticeship game. It's a trades kind of game, meaning you kind of got to learn it by just being in it. And that doesn't mean everyone has to be a super active portfolio manager and trade every day or anything like that. But when you first get started, there's a little bit of that element, right? Because there's rushes that come out of it, and obviously the GameStop frenzy and everything with AMC and meme coins and things like that really play into that. But ultimately, I do think the big impact is it's introduced people to it. I think they've learned a little bit more about the system than in a much faster way than they would have, and that's, I think, a net positive over the long term, as long as they know how to wield it correctly and kind of adjust now and learn and evolve, whether it is they want to manage part of their assets and portfolios actively, or also just hey, allocate and know that the markets are where you can build wealth, and compounding is a magical tool, and be aware of it, right? And be aware of all the things around you, and so I think that's the big positive. A lot of things haven't changed. I mean, for us as a business, we've obviously grown and everything, so that's
Mhm.
changed. But I think the things that probably haven't changed are fundamentally it's still about information. And it doesn't matter what kind of investor or trader you are. There's different domains, whether you're crypto or equities or options or alternatives or real estate. Information is the key, and that has remained very much constant. I think we are seeing an explosion in access to information because there were so many people on that were coming online, and so whether it's content and community, right, which I think is a big part of that apprenticeship model. And I think that's why, one of the strengths of Stocktwits, of how do you find your communities and tribes of what you're interested in, and how can we do a better job to serve that and to enable that and empower that as we build. But so we've seen an explosion there, but fundamentally it will still be about information. How do you use it? How do you understand it? who are you learning from to understand it? And now you have a lot more ways to do it. There's a lot more startups, a lot of investment going into, spaces in the investing world and the trading world. And so it's, I think it's a net big positive. There's a lot of things still to be cautious of and worried about, whether it's in stocks, whether it's in crypto, whether it's in NFTs in the new world, kind of there. But it's still very much the way to, kind of plan for your future, I think.
Yeah, I mean, and I think that it's just bringing that communal aspect to investing and trading and and wealth management in general, right? And I think I feel like there's probably a correlation between the mass amount of information and content that's out there that can be really hard to navigate and feel very overwhelming, especially for investors, right? Even in times like we're in right now. Between the Russia's invasion of Ukraine and things happening and folks being confused, maybe not understanding like what do these sanctions mean, what is going to happen financially, and not of course caring first about like people are at war and dying, but like also what does this mean for our global economy, and but then you at least but what sometimes brings comfort in these times is like oh, there's like a 5 million member community that I can maybe lean on to help me decipher through the noise. I feel like there's like obviously that correlation between content and community, and one helping out the other.
Well, and let me share one kind of interesting thing that came up last week as a result of the Ukraine Russian war kind of going on. So we have our daily newsletter called the Daily Rip, which goes out 7 days a week. End of day, covers the markets, covers what's going on. It's an amazing newsletter. We have an awesome team that puts that out. We have 1.2 million plus subscribers just on that newsletter with like awesome engagement. But we were covering Ukraine a decent amount, and we started getting some feedback like, hey, you're not a news site, like, let's just go back to the markets. And, and we responded, like, hey, these massively impact the markets. If you haven't noticed, the markets are not a vacuum that exists outside of the real world. They are very much impacted by the real world. So whether it's, global warming and climate change, which are long macro things, or whether it is, the war in Russia and what's going to happen with, all the sanctions and the impacts of that, currency, these are all things that are interconnected, the impact, what's the impact on crypto, et cetera. Oil, that's going to affect our day-to-day lives, right? In terms of the gas, pump, heating, things of that nature. So, I think content's really important in the community to connect. Again, like, people tend to seek out like-minded communities, and we've kind of worked really hard to kind of put that information out there, and we have a lot more work to do and a lot more opportunity ahead of us. But the RIP was one of those examples where we literally had to address it, of hey, this matters. This matters a lot in the world economy and the markets, and we should be paying attention to it.
And like kudos to you guys, right, for having like a teaching moment, right, with your audience, because I think it can be. I think that's maybe I was eventually gonna ask you, what do you think people misunderstand about like the fintech industry? But I think what people maybe misunderstand about the market first is that it is emotional. It is like it is tied to completely to world events, and to think otherwise, to think that like the geopolitical atmosphere and markets are like two separate things, and like okay, well, information sources should just stick to only doing markets, and then like politics is like that. No. If we've learned anything from COVID, we are so connected in every single way, right?
Yeah.
So I appreciate that you guys like are putting that message out to your millions of viewers.
Yeah. And, we are humans at the end of the day, right? So we're not robots yet, we're not automatons. And I spent a lot of time in the hedge fund industry and, kind of learning and observing there, and behavioral finances, where you kind of study the human psychology and stuff. That is probably one of the most important components. If you are a trader or an active investor, understanding your biases and understanding your personal behavior is really important to being successful as an investor and managing risk and all those things. And if you're going to be active in the markets, you need to understand that we're humans and the world is connected, and we're more and more connected every day. And that's why all this stuff matters. And it's been time really kind of diving into that. There's some amazing work kind of in that space of behavioral finance and psychology and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, is that something you think about even just when it comes to like, I guess the future of Stocktwits, and what are you like excited for? I guess it's just about like continuing. It's like the momentum and growing and like, right? Because they're like exactly like fintech and the markets and just content around this and the community. There's so much momentum right now. It's like, how do you decipher, what rocket ship you're trying to be on? Because you're like Stocktwits touches just all of it, so it's almost like
Yeah, and it's definitely a challenge as a CEO. One of my core jobs is capital allocation. Where do we invest our time and resources, right? But I think we have a ton of opportunity. We've done a great job of over and Stocktwits is not like a new startup. It's been around. It was founded in 2008, and it's stood the test of time. And organically, our community of has grown to 6 million plus members, and that's been very organic. And we've done a great job of that. Highly engaged community in the conversations. For us, the opportunity now is to deliver a lot more value to that community, to help them on this journey, whether they are existing pros or new to the game, help them on the journey through content and community to help them learn and help them find new ideas to invest in, and then give them the tools, give them the data, that information access. Drop those barriers and give them as much of a level playing field with all the other participants in the markets, whether it's institutions or not, and enable them through that and empower them through that, and then ultimately connect the dots to their execution, and trading wherever they are. And the exciting thing for us, and I think we talked about this a little before, which is the world is more and more global, right? There's no denying that. And, Stocktwits has historically been primarily US centric. So we're really expanded, kind of excited about the international opportunities ahead of us and growing and bring, connecting the global community and not just, the US stock investors. So there's a ton to come, and we can totally dive into that more too later. But I think it's just going to be really exciting across the board, and we're built for the long term, right? We're not going anywhere.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I mean, okay, yeah, I have two things. Like one, where in like across the globe are you maybe like most excited, or maybe you love them all? And yeah, we'll start there and then I'll ask my other question.
I think where we're expanding next, and it's very much public information, and we're out there is India is our next kind of main focus from a go-to-market expansion, right? Launching there. For the obvious reasons, and some maybe not so obvious reasons. The obvious ones being it's a big market, 400 million millennials, really underinvested in the market. I think it's depending on which report you read or which research you read, it's between 2 and 4% are invested in the market. So compared to the U.S., where we're about 50% of households in the U.S. have exposure to the market. So huge opportunity, growth opportunity there. And I also think, again, from a demographic perspective, from what are going to be the catalysts to get people into the markets and get them interested. I think social and community is a big part of it. But I also think, there's a lot of tech companies in India that are maturing, that are going to be going public or have started going public. And that is, I think, one of those psychological factors where, hey, I know the name of this company now, right? And it's not that old company that my mom or dad, always are fans of. This is like the new tech company. It's going public. I can now buy shares in it. Wow. I can, own a piece of it because I'm a user, or I'm excited about it. And so I think those, some of those types of underlying catalysts for us is really exciting, in India. I think there's a lot of other markets in the near term, Australia, not nearly as big, but, active, next gen, investing in trading community, places like Brazil, Mexico, places in Europe in the near term. And then over the long term, I think the opportunity outside the US of in investing and trading in the markets is just huge. when you look much further out. You look at Africa, you look at South America as a whole,
Mm-hmm.
Latin America as a whole, you look at Southeast Asia as a whole. That's even Africa, Middle East. Just the demographics suggest that there's going to be a lot more interest. There's going to be a lot more excitement around owning your investments and kind of getting exposure to the markets. And so that'll be really, I think, for us, that'll be a great opportunity. But just generally, I'm excited to see how this evolves. Like how things evolve for the companies, the technologies, and everything around it.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And no, that's awesome. Like the international markets is such an area that I love paying attention to because it's just right. It's going back to that connectivity. Like we're really starting to feel it now, and starting to feel kind of like our more digital world actually like kind of helping us expand to other markets. And yeah, it's just great to see. For once, it's like I don't love when like the U.S. feels so siloed, right? And so when it comes to like fintech and content and equity, it's nice to bring that to other emerging markets like India. And then my other question that I had when you were talking before was really just do you feel like that because Stocktwits has been around maybe a bit longer than some of like the other social investing, like social media driven platforms out there, do you think that like helps with why you guys are so massive? And what do you think helps you kind of stand out from the competition? Because yeah, there's just like more competition is coming up, which is always good for the market. But like, just
Yeah,
curious what you think of that.
yeah. From a social perspective, I think it does. Well, I'll say two things. One is, while we are large, we're not like that, right? I mean, 6 million members, great, that's large, but we're not like Twitter large or anything. We're not ubiquitous, and I think that's a big opportunity for us. I emphasize that we've grown organically, but there's probably an opportunity for us to grow inorganically, like marketing and stuff, and getting the name out there and sharing with the broader community. And that's what we've slowly started doing. We'll be more aggressive about that probably, later this year and in the coming future. So there's a lot of opportunity for us there. But I think, yeah, having this organically grown community, highly engaged, what that does is when you come to Stocktwits, these are very liquid communities. And yeah, that's kind of the term I really like to use because for social and for conversation, it is about liquidity, right? You don't want to go someplace and it's like, 5 people talking and maybe they post once every other day. You go on the AMC stream on Stocktwits right now, and I will tell you there's a very active conversation. And we have the ability to capture the zeitgeist across, what's happening in the market. So, our trending feature is really cool. And it's, I mean, something I use, multiple times a day because we're updating it. I believe, it gets updated every 5 minutes. But you can see what is the community like, what's trending in the community? Like, what are people talking about? Not just in absolutes, because then that'll always be the big companies, but on a relative basis, meaning, hey, all of a sudden people are talking about SoFi, right? So from last night to this morning, and I don't know if it's still number one right now trending, but SoFi, because they had great earnings report and last night, and so that became the number one conversation. And on weekends it's pretty much all crypto, right? I mean, because the stock markets are closed, and so crypto gets to take over. And being 24/7 is both a gift and a curse there. But so to me, I think that's one of our biggest advantages from that social perspective is that we have a large, highly active, highly engaged community, and that leads to liquidity. So when new people come, it's really interesting. Now we have a lot of work to do to make it, more accessible, and how do we, further deliver value and let the cream rise to the crop and a bunch of other things. But yeah, I think that definitely helps us, and yeah, like that's because we've been around and we've stood the test of many a markets and many ups and downs over the years,
Yeah.
and like I said, we're not going anywhere.
Yeah, no, yeah, absolutely. No, great answer. I mean, when you think about like, because I mean, right now it's all about niche markets, right? Right now it is all about, yeah, sure, there might be another, platform out there that has 50 million followers or whatever, but then, but for you to have 5 million or 6 million just highly engaged, right? Like that actually is, far more valuable. because it's really more about like having that engagement than as opposed to having a massive following. I mean, that's why like micro influencers exist, or like
Yeah.
how even someone like myself can even like monetize a podcast and a newsletter, right? Because and I have I have like almost 8,000 subscribers, but like that at the end of the day, and I'm growing, but like I want them to be so as engaged as possible. Like if I get a couple unsubscribers, that's fine because I want them engaged. So yeah, it's like is when you think about that when you think about like the long term vision, or are you like, I want to be huge?
No, absolutely. Well, I think I think that's actually complementary to each other because I
Yeah.
think, you get huge by serving the micro communities or what I call tribes, right? So that's one of the, efforts we have underway this year is how do we, better enable tribes to form and connect and, what are the dynamics there? Because, the world of investing and trading is very wide, right? You can't just like, yeah, we can all just call it investing, but it is, tons of different ways. So in the trading world, right, like you have, one extreme of, whether it's just day trading, but, swing traders, momentum traders, technical analysts and charting, so those are all communities unto themselves. And the other extreme, like, you have your long only value investors, which has been a rough existence for the last 10 years. But you might have ESG investors or cannabis investors or IPO and SPAC investors, and event driven and global macro. And so there's so many different styles and communities there. And that's, I think by now helping and focusing and giving the tools and ways for those communities to form and connect and find each other, because you may not be interested in the conversation that's happening between two technical analysts on a specific stock, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because you're a long-term buy and hold. You're not going to be going in and out of that position on a weekly basis because that's just not how you invest or trade, right? But so how do we help you find that? So I think that's but that's how you get big too, right? If you solve the small problems, if you
Mm-hmm.
solve it for those individual communities, and then you can connect them and bring them all together on a platform, you have that opportunity to get bigger and bigger there. And it's not just by strategy or style. It's also about, global, like I said, expanding to other countries and covering other markets and expanding asset classes, right? So we've, been pretty fortunate in the world of crypto, and now we're launching, into NFTs, into, and expanding kind of data and information there, alternatives and collectibles. Again, these are things that are available to the next generation of investors, right? My dad didn't have that. When I was growing up, my dad had stocks and mutual funds, right? And if he was really getting crazy, then maybe bonds or something. And I remember in the '80s taking the stock prices of his portfolio, which was like 5 or 6 stocks, maybe, I don't even know. And I would take the prices out of the newspaper every day and look them up, right? And that super fine print. And I'd chart them on graph paper. Like I was my dad's mint.com, before mint.com was around. And I would, chart the prices and all that. But now, between all the things that you, Nicole, have access to invest in right now, it's way more than just stocks and mutual funds, right? So I think that's, it's by being able to serve those communities, and it's a challenge, trying to serve all of them. But that's the challenge we're going to take on.
Yeah, no, I love it, and I love it, and I think it's it's a unique factor, right, of Stocktwits and what you're building and what you're doing, and so really, really, really cool. Okay, so then what I'm going to now ask you is, we know you love music. Will you share your favorite line in a Tupac song that you think really just relates best to like fintech and like this investing community? Is that
Well, it's not so much fintech, but I mean, it is about investing in markets, and it's not the most positive light in the sense of it is the dangers of the markets, right? And if you look, I've gotten pretty into NFTs and that world right now, right? That's a very active space. But before NFTs, there was ICOs, and before that, we've also been in the SPAC world too over the last 2 years, which has
Mhm.
kind of fallen apart.
Yeah.
But this happens to all asset classes. It's happened through the test of time, and it's about how people go about kind of taking advantage of the moment just to make some money. Maybe not the best way. And so the line is one of my lines that I kind of describe the NFT world right now is given all the projects and rug pulls that kind of happen is from the changes track, right, which is you got to operate the easy way. I made a G today. Yeah, but you made it in a sleazy way, selling crack to the kid. I got to get paid. Well, hey, that's just the way it is. And so, there's a lot of that happens in the markets and stuff. And so I think that's where, again, community and education and, what can we do to help people avoid that, and not get caught up there. It's hard.
Hmm. Yeah, I mean, well, and you have to like acknowledge, and what a better way to kind of acknowledge some of the, more, I guess, darker sides, right, of things than through, relating it with like music or just like other things. And I mean, I do that like all the time.
Yeah.
I'm gonna have to pick my favorite song lyric though that relates to like fintech and investing. I'm gonna have to mull that one over.
We'll have a fintech, like karaoke session or something where we'll work
Oh my
through
gosh.
all.
Yes, yes. All right. I
I'm
mean,
down.
I think the call to action here is actually like a fintech, like New York fintech karaoke session. Pretty sure. So yeah, no one for Acorns can DJ. And then and Rishi, you can collaborate with him. Although you said he was better, so I don't know.
Yeah,
Anyway,
I'll just do the
so
emceeing. I'll get everyone up on stage to do
there
singing.
you go. There you go. Honestly, being the MC is like the funnest job anyway. Amazing, amazing. Well, I will ask you maybe just two more questions. Okay, so
Okay.
one is beyond your own company.
Yeah.
What is maybe like a novel fintech or business model that is like transforming the space that you admire?
Yeah, so I mean, I think I'm going to go to where I've been spending time, and we just talked about it a little bit. Is kind of, well, let's call it the crypto/Web3 world. NFTs being a manifestation of that, but really like kind of the things that are happening in decentralized finance. And I think it's really interesting because these first couple waves of fintech, right? And fintech is this really broad term because there's
Mm-hmm.
so much in fintech. But these first couple waves, I think a lot of these things have been built on the infrastructure of decades past, right? Even broker like the Robin Hoods and those things of the world, they just sit on top of all the legacy infrastructure, right? They're
Yeah.
not rethinking and rebuilding. So I think what's happening with the blockchain, what's happening with the metaverse, and how NFTs play a role in that, and how I think they're going to do a better job of realizing this vision that fintech is everywhere and fintech touches everything, because they're more in this sense of open protocols, and accessibility, right? It's kind of like what the internet protocols
Mm-hmm.
were to the 90s, and we're seeing billions of dollars invested in the space. Arguably there's an overinvestment going on, but that's what happens, right? We
Mm-hmm.
overinvested in the 90s in fiber and telecom. Those companies, a lot of them crashed and lost a lot of value from a stock market or enterprise value perspective, but they laid the foundation for 5G and all the things coming now. And so I think, to me, really interesting of what can blockchain do, what can this the Web3 metaverse paradigm do of connecting money to the future, and how that impacts us really over the long term. Are we really fundamentally going to start changing things and building new foundations and new infrastructure, or are we going to remain in kind of things that were built 50, 60 years ago, and we're just kind of still on top of them?
Yeah. No. Oh my gosh. Great answer. I agree. It's like so exciting to think that, and hard to ignore, right? That we're in this position that we're in, right? I feel almost like lucky. Like one of the reasons I even really got into journalism, outside of like changing the world, was to, is to like, it's so awesome to just like be able to have the opportunity to report on history and like record what is going on. And, I'm always going to be able to look back and say like, oh, this is like what was happening at the time. And I think that that's where we're at right now is kind of like that precipice of like the next 10 years or whatever, something insanely new, a new internet, like and it's gonna
Yeah,
come with its good and its bads and its uglies and its
absolutely.
confusion and everything, but like here we are, so let's like enjoy the ride, I guess. So
Yeah, and
awesome, awesome.
and going back to the track, hey, that's just the way it is.
That's just the way it is. Tupac said it best. All right. Well, that is awesome. Final thoughts. Please tell us what the F we can expect from you and Stocktwits next.
We're excited. We recently launched crypto trading right in the platform, so that was pretty exciting. We're still waitlist gated because there's a lot that goes into it, but we got more and more people kind of that we're letting off and are actively trading. And so I think one of the big parts is connecting that dot. So we're going to be coming out with equities and options in the coming weeks and months and quarters. So that's going to be really exciting. And then I think our the asset class expansion, the global expansion that I was alluding to earlier, that's all happening this year. And 2022 is going to be really this year, I think, of evolution for us. And ultimately, we just want to deliver more value to our users in the community and give them the best opportunity to learn and profit ultimately and build wealth over time. And so we're really excited about that. We have a lot coming up. Q2, Q3, Q4. I mean, it's just mostly, hey, we're hiring everyone. So, if anyone is interested, come on down. But
I love it.
yeah.
I love it. I love it. I love when my guests plug that they're hiring. It's like my favorite thing. This is a podcast for industry professionals, so
yeah. Hey.
I hope this can be a bridge to help you find some folks you need. I know. Well, awesome. Well, this is a wrap on this episode. Thank you so much again, Rishi, for joining us. Such an awesome conversation. Thank you to our listeners for tuning in. If you loved this episode, be sure to hit that subscribe button. You can find me on all your favorite podcast platforms. Until next time, talk to you all soon.